imagery by its very nature is sort of open-ended in some ways, that allows for those, I think, interaction with the viewer. The work came about initially as a sort of response to Jacob Lawrence's migration series from 1940-41. And so using certainly the sort of formal aspects of his work, the subject matter, about migration, but also aware to not even attempt to reproduce what he's doing, but certainly using it as a kind of historical marker. Even though I'm using the form of the linear storyboard or film strip, and they're laid out in the gallery to suggest a film strip, so they're not functioning as sort of completely linear, and certainly not in the exhibition space. So hopefully that the viewer can locate themselves in the gallery space by walking backwards and forwards, trying to create the narrative through their movements. In how I've placed the images in the sequence is that the story isn't fleshed out by what's next to each image, but might pick up on a narrative point earlier or prefigure something that comes much later. So the viewer has to really work backwards and forwards to not so much complete the circle, but bring together different reference points. There's a number of different factors going on which are specifically about travel and migration and about moving through different locations, but also want to address different effects upon the body, different kinds of pleasures, different inhibitions in the body, anxieties, fears. And so that hopefully the images are doing that rather than that being spelled out necessarily for the viewer. And it might be done through different textures within the image, close-ups. So I think there's a number of different elements that are brought in through those that I want the viewer to respond to, but also create their own narratives. Lawrence's technique where he has his paintings with text at the bottom of each one, and the text becomes part of the narrative device and drives the narrative. And so since I wanted it to refer to that technique by using text within my photographs. So I'm paying particular attention to signage. For example, of a street sign saying no left turn into the Pacific when it's Columbus Street. And so when one reads that historically, what would that mean for Columbus not being allowed to the Pacific? And how does the migrant or the traveler interpret those signs? I'm also careful to try and not have them read as only autobiographical. So there are different kinds of play, I think, that certainly I identify that there is, as in a fiction film, there is a protagonist, and in this instance he is Indian and he is male, much like myself, but he's also identified within the images. That one of the photographs, as the plane is passing over Indiana, our fictional protagonist is watching the screen, the entertainment screen in the plane, and he's watching the plane as it goes over the word Indiana and obscures the last A, so it reads as Indian. And so he gets to place himself geographically and identify himself geographically at that particular moment in time. Viewers reading the narrative that I presented, but they're recreating it for themselves, and therefore being created by the works as well. And so there's something reciprocal in that action of recreation, and it's understood as an action of fiction, because you're sort of creating this fictional narrative for yourself as a viewer. And for me, that's also how I'm doing it as the maker of the work, that it's not about me, it's in a sort of external making. And in that sense of thinking of autobiography also as fiction, that it's certainly a selection of selecting of memories, it's a selecting or a choosing of which memories might, any person will choose to represent themselves. And so, in that sense, I'm much more engaged with how fiction works than autobiography works. So really think of the work as equivalent of a novel, but perhaps more so as a storyboard for film.